an inclusive and sustainable society, which is what we're called upon to create, is necessarily a knowledge society.
We want to learn from others, offer our knowledge, and engage in mutually beneficial collaboration.
What we adopted last September was actually a political manifesto.
The world is so large. We have so many problems to solve. It's so big that we, starting with ourselves, have to learn how to not be so territorial and protective about what we have and be willing to share it, understanding that we'll get something out of that.
And this notion that universities are there to help create good citizens that have all the traits in order to solve these global challenges, I think is key.
So universities are very, very competitive, and the system that ranks universities feeds that competition even more.
Demand-driven research is essential, and we need a scientific approach to evaluate whether our methods work and what should be done differently.
Can we shift to an era where you define partnerships around issues which need urgent attention? Because people feel passionately about issues more than they feel about institutions, I suspect.
About knowledge. Knowledge is also a raw material. It's the raw material with which we build or distillate wisdom.
Are we creating learning pathways and journeys which are not just simply curricular, where you're pulling together logically bundled content, but you're actually creating really vibrant learning journeys?
This is something that is going to influence very much the set of skills and attitudes that government officials need to have to sort of reinforce the multi-stakeholder platforms where they exist for engaging more with non-state stakeholders.
If we can have kind of shared online platform where all the problems and all the efforts or the interests are shared in cloud, and eventually locally we have the institution as the local hub to help the students.
It was quite striking today that you had this discourse about learning by doing as if it was new.
How do you make the learning centered around that conversation, not around the delivery of your content?
I think we have to learn a lot from youth. They have a lot of keys. We just need to trust them and listen to them.
These things don't communicate themselves. So let's be bold. As Reagan said, if we're explaining, we're losing. Let's try and find innovative ways actually to communicate what is a great message.
It's not a technological problem. It's not a problem of, well, design. It's mainly a problem of who decide what is important to be learned.
Trust needs to be created before we really think about scaling and scaling fast, right? And behind trust is very often a question of legitimacy.
A healthy suspicion of authority claims is absolutely central to the scientific process. That's why we have double-blind review. If you're a Nobel Prize winner and you submit garbage to a journal, it will be rejected as garbage because no one knows who wrote it. Once someone knows who wrote it, no one will dare reject it.
There are many, many sources of legitimacy, and what we need to do is to not take a notion of legitimacy that restricts creativity, invention, innovation, and openness.
Perfect venue with a crowd that is actually so akin to
in agriculture.
I think that this Trialogue is just the beginning of a very long story. We need now to reproduce this kind of meeting between the private sector, the academic partners, and the international organization in order to produce public policies based on evidence. And that will be the next step of this Trialogue.